Okay, I am so excited to welcome on today Dr. Danielle Johnson.
Good morning.
Good morning. So we are here to talk a little bit more about her recent blog article that was published on our Women in White Coats blog, and it's all about physician suicide. We recently had National Physician Suicide Awareness Day a few days ago. It's the first one ever, and it's really about bringing awareness to the whole issue of physician suicide. And also, in particular, since our blog is all about women in white coats, we really wanted to address, in particular, the issues and things that actually come up more for women in medicine, and the stressors in their lives as well. So that was a really great article, Danielle.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to discuss it further, just so viewers know a little bit about you. I just want to introduce you. So Dr. Danielle Johnson is a psychiatrist, and she is also the chief of adult psychiatry and the director of women's mental health programs at Lindner Center, which is in Ohio. And she's also a co-author of The Chronicles of Women in White Coats, which was actually the inspiration for this entire blog, the Women in White Coats blog. So thank you so much for joining in.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
So you're welcome. And so just in general, what are your thoughts about the Physician Suicide Awareness Day and why that's important?
I'm very glad that it's there. I didn't know about it at first. This is the first one. It was started by the Council for Emergency Medicine Residency Directors in collaboration with a lot of other emergency medicine organizations, which I thought was wonderful, just for people to recognize that suicide is not just an issue for psychiatry, that all specialties need to be aware of it, and emergency medicine physicians obviously experience people who have attempted. So it's an issue for emergency medicine as well. And I think just knowing that you have colleagues in all specialties who realize it's a problem and want to bring awareness to it was a great thing. It's really a public health crisis, and so it's really necessary that people are aware of the problem. I mean, suicide in general has increased over the past 20 years or so, about 30% increase in rates all across the board. And then last year, there was a literature review about physician suicide and just finding that the rates are 2 to 3 times the general population. And out of all occupations, it's the highest suicide rate in physicians. And it's just very staggering and startling.
Yeah, the numbers are really staggering. And I think part of the issue, as you mentioned in your article, is that physicians may not seek help.
Right.
And there's also this stigma, against, having mental illness ourselves. However, there's obviously a lot of stressors.
Right.
So maybe we can talk about like the different stressors that might lead physicians to actually have this increased rate of depression and suicide.
Right. So in general, just becoming a physician is a very difficult process. There's, 4 years of college, then 4 years of medical school, and then at least 3 years of residency, depending on your specialty. And you're working all the time, you're studying all the time, you're isolated from your family and friends, and basically you have people's lives in your hands all the time, and that's a big stressor right there. And when you're in training, that's the thing, you're training, and so there is room for mistakes and errors, and having that weight of never wanting to make a mistake because you want to provide great patient care, but also knowing that you're human and things happen, and having the weight of that on your shoulders is very difficult. I think also there's a bit of I don't know what the right word for it is, but I don't want to say hazing because it's not hazing, but just that you have to kind of earn your spot in a way, like, medical students are given all the scut work, and then, residents are, given difficult work by their attendings, and, it's just, you have to move up in the ranks, and it can be hard to do that. and sometimes it's made difficult to do that, to make sure that you're cut out to be a physician. but it puts a lot of stress on you.
Yeah. Now, did you have, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying you don't get sleep. Sometimes you don't have time to eat. Sometimes I said you don't have time to see your family or friends. It's really, once you're in this, it's difficult to not be anything but a med student or a resident or a physician.
Yes, it's definitely all consuming, and it's very easy to let go of the self-care because you don't have a lot of time, and you're certainly running on less sleep. There's a lot of stressors. Everyone's expecting you to be perfect. Right. And never ever make a mistake. And of course, we ourselves never want to make a mistake.
Right.
So there's all those stressors kind of along the way. Now, did you happen to find in the literature anything about if medical students and trainees, like residents and medical students, were more likely to become depressed or suicidal compared to attendees?
Yeah. So for attending physicians, the rates of depression were the same as the general population, but they found in med students and residents that it ranged from 15 to 30%, which is a lot higher than the general population. And one of the things mentioned in the article that I read, even though this is not the most common scenario, but there is the possibility that someone can, go through med school and not get a residency spot. And so you've spent, all this time of your life, graduating medical school, and you can't be a physician. And so just the heartbreak and letdown and sense of failure that comes along with that. And that is a high risk time if that scenario happens to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely. And then to take on all that debt
and
not be able to practice is kind of a difficult spot to be in.
Yes. I think just the debt in general is overwhelming. Even when, you are a practicing physician, I don't think people realize that the debt, no matter how much money you're making, the debt is still lingering. And a lot of people, don't have a positive net worth for a very large part of their lives because they're medical school debt.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I just think in general, there's just this whole perception that as doctors, we're superhuman, right? Like we don't need to eat. We don't need to sleep. We don't need to do self-care, and that we don't get depressed. We're like, we're like the, perfect and have no issues, but clearly that's not the case. So in general, was there anything that you could identify that seems like kind of like more stressors on women, women physicians or women students and trainees?
Yes, so definitely having children during your training is difficult because you don't get a lot of time off, first of all. And if you do take a decent amount of time off, it puts you behind in your training. So you have to catch up or you might graduate late. And then going back to training and, having to breastfeed is a challenge in and of itself. And, having time to study and work, when you're trying to take care of a baby. So having a baby during training is difficult in general. And a lot of women do that. And then still, even if a woman may be the primary earner in the family, she still is the primary caretaker of the household and children as well. So the responsibilities of taking care of the house doesn't really lessen just because a woman is a physician. And then also the divorce rates are higher for women physicians than for men physicians. And divorce is a risk factor for depression and suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I've totally been there trying to pump while I'm on an emergency medicine shift in the ER, like just trying to sneak away for 10 or 15 minutes to be able to pump. It's a really tough juggling act. And then of course, like when you're home and you have little children, you really don't get the same amount of sleep that you would normally. And even your downtime at home is really not downtime, like with your kids, and you have to be, you want to be present with them. And then you also want to, and then if they're toddlers, you have to be very vigilant and watching them very closely, making sure they're not getting into things or getting hurt. So it can be a really tough juggling act.
And I think there's a lot of guilt comes along with that too, because we don't have the time that we want to give to our kids, and we miss school activities, and can't take them to birthday parties or play dates and those kinds of things. There's a lot of guilt that comes along with it too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think, being a woman in medicine can be really tough in terms of juggling all those things. Sometimes it feels like you can't win. On the one hand, you want to have your career and you want to succeed there. On the other hand, then it's taking away family time, and trying to balance it all out. And, it can be really tough, definitely. And so what have you found were some solutions or things people can do, if they're feeling depressed or, really ways to kind of maybe prevent depression and burnout?
I think one of the biggest things is that, residency training programs, med schools, hospitals, they need to make sure that the stigma surrounding getting help is not there. So making sure that your students, your residents, your employees know that you are there to offer help and it's okay. Unfortunately, some physicians have ended up getting, suspensions on their license or, having to take time off work or, it's been punitive instead of helpful when they do seek help, and that just has to stop. That can't happen. So I think that's what prevents people from getting help. So I think if they have the support to know that it's okay to get help, and also from their colleagues as well, like colleagues encouraging each other to get help and knowing that, if I need to take time off, I have somebody to cover for me, and, those kinds of things. And just having someone to talk to. So just reducing the stigma and the roadblocks to getting help. But as far as self-care, I think schools are doing a better job of teaching about burnout early. So hopefully kind of this new generation of med students and residents does a better job than maybe we did and people before us did about self-care. So I think really, it's a learning to take time for yourself, making sure sleep is a priority, making sure you're exercising, eating right, those kinds of things have to become a priority. I think we have to understand that good patient care comes from good self-care. And so we can't neglect ourselves. The better we take care of ourselves, the better we can take care of our patients.
Absolutely. I totally believe in that. Like, we have to fill our own cups, right? To be able
Right.
to truly give to someone else. You can't just deplete yourself to give to other people, but you have to fill yourself, your own cup too, and hopefully give from that overflow.
Right.
And then that is really true giving. And I think that that's absolutely really important. And, I do think that, you hear people say that nowadays, the newer doctors, they're really more concerned about lifestyle. Like they really want a more balanced lifestyle. Whereas back in the day, it was more like eat, live, breathe, medicine, and that was it. Like there was really nothing else. And you're just always sacrificing yourself,
Right.
always sacrificing your family time. But now I think the newer generations are trying to find more work-life balance,
Right.
Family time, and then even if they have to do job sharing or whatever it may be, or maybe being more aware of these things
Right.
before they choose their field, And I think that sometimes, people, and even I was like this when I chose my field, I was just going by my passion, and I still do love emergency medicine. Right. But sometimes, that lifestyle aspect isn't always emphasized. And then
Right.
if you're not a parent or a mother or a father at the time, it can be really hard to understand how much your life will change
Right.
when you have kids, and how much you'll want to be with your family on the weekends, and how they might be, like my daughter cries when I sometimes she cries when I go in for a weekend shift. She's 6 years old and she just wants to be with her mom,
Right.
and so it's really hard and I could have never imagined that when I was in medical school. I had no concept of truly what it would be like to be a parent and to have, kind of understand, but theoretically, but it's so different when you're actually in the moment. So I think definitely having people in medical school talk more about lifestyle and understanding, because that really does make a huge impact.
Right. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, any other tips that you have or any other things that you wanted to say on the topic?
Again, just emphasizing that it's more important to get help than to worry about feeling embarrassed or less respected, and colleagues have to encourage each other to get help. We don't want to lose anyone. So we need to do things to help save lives, because this is a big issue for physicians.
Absolutely. And I think, unfortunately, I think that most of us in medicine know colleagues who have actually taken their life, whether in med school or residency.
Right.
And actually, in our book, in the Chronicles of Women in White Coats, Dr. Maria Perez Johnson, she wrote a really touching chapter on a friend of hers who was an attending who took her life. And so it's something that I'm so glad that they did come up with this awareness day to really bring awareness to it, because it's something that people really aren't aware of, you know, and then the other
Right.
thing, even like in dentistry, it's a really common problem too.
Yeah.
Depression and suicidality. So I'm really glad that, you know, we're bringing more awareness to it, because shining the light on it really can help people just be more aware. And sometimes physicians aren't even aware themselves of what they're
Right.
feeling and what to do. And I think the more we talk about it, the more we take away the stigma and encourage self-care and people to get help is really, really key. And I'm glad you mentioned that. So thank you so much, Danielle.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Talking with you.
You too.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.